The 1-2 Football Podcast. The voices of tomorrow, here today.
Hey guys, welcome back to the 1-2 Football Podcast. I'm Nathan, and today we're talking about some of football's hottest topics, including Aguero's departure and England under-21's failure to qualify from the groups again. As usual, I'm joined by Ollie and Kieran. How are you guys getting on?
I'm all right, yeah. I just wanted to say one thing real quick. We talked about VAR last week, and we all said we dissed it. We all dissed it. But then last night in the Germany game, I mean, clear handball. It just makes you at moments like that think we do need VAR. I just wanted to say that real early.
Who did the decision benefit?
Germany. They lost anyway. They still lost. But yeah, they still technically it didn't change the game, but it could have been 3-1 because I mean Germany handballed it clearly in the box, and North Macedonia or whatever didn't get the penalty. But I watched the highlights and I was thinking that's when VAR I feel like has been needed so much in these qualifiers, and yet I was slagging it off last week. So it's just like, what do we do? Because it's rubbish, but when we don't have it, it's more controversial. So just wanted to get that.
It's subjective, isn't it, with how the decisions play out and stuff. That's the problem with it, really, because you could argue as well in the England game. I'm pretty sure there was a Maguire handball as well, which was not a definite, but you know, you worry with VAR there. It could have just given it out of nowhere, and so you kind of have to think about these things and put it into perspective of what it would do. But I mean, Germany losing, regardless of anything, is very embarrassing.
Timo Werner miss howling.
Oh, it's so bad, isn't it? So bad.
We're going to talk about it later, but Chelsea should sign Aguero. I know they're interested, but they need to get him to replace that flop. Anyway, how are you, Kieran?
Been enjoying the international break, Kieran?
No. No, to be fair, I've watched a few more EFL games than I would normally do. But it was like Saturday and Sunday just felt like a weekday, really. Like nothing really massively differentiated it, because you know, in the days of no fans, it's football every 2 hours. It feels like. So to not have that was weird. But no, I'm just glad it's over now.
It's been weird. I've probably watched about 3 football matches. So, I mean, good stuff for this podcast. I've barely watched anything. Watched the City game at Exeter, I should say City, and then we'll talk about the England under-21s and how naff they've been. I'm lucky enough not to watch any of them, but I've seen the highlights and I've got a lot to say about the England under-21s. But we will talk about that. So let's get into
someone in particular.
Oh.
You're gonna go crazy on it. Let's get into it before you start.
Yeah, come on.
So it was announced earlier this week that Sergio Aguero will be finally leaving Manchester City after, I believe, 10 years at the club, maybe longer, maybe less. Guys, what do you think? I mean, this is huge news. He feels like he's been a staple of Manchester City in the modern era.
I think it is the end of an era, really, for Man City. I mean, he's the last member of that, title-winning 2011 team to go. So it's huge, and he's been sort of that sort of guy, person, say, for the last decade. He's been most definitely the best striker in the Premier League for the past 10 years. So it's a real shame to see some of that quality sort of leave. Whether or not he leaves the Premier League completely is yet to be known. There's a lot of clubs going for him, which I'm sure we'll touch on in a bit. But yeah, it's weird to think of Man City and not Aguero. I know we said last week about Messi and Barcelona go hand in hand, but sort of Aguero goes sort of like that, not so much, but still goes like that with Man City. So it's a massive shame. But obviously, as a rival, as Man United fan, it's kind of a good news as well. I know he's not been at the races that much this season, but I'm not going to complain with some of the best players leaving them. So yeah.
It's a strange one because his playing time has kind of gone down over the years. Gabriel Jesus has kind of had to take that role, and Man City kind of just play anyone up front in that midfield. It's been obviously mainly due to Aguero's injuries, but where do you see his future kind of lying, Kieran?
I think for me, what resonates most was what he said in the All or Nothing documentary. In that, he may have this lavish lifestyle of living in a big house on the big wages, playing football, but at the end of the day, he's still human and he misses home. I think that's just how it works for a lot of people. He's got a young family who he's away from, so it's bound to take a toll on anyone. And I think, especially when you're not playing, especially this season, Aguero spent a lot of time away from the pitch. So you can only imagine it's massively distressing for him mentally as well as physically being injured. So I wouldn't at all be surprised if he does go back to Argentina. I'm not sure where. You look at Carlos Tevez, somebody like that who'd gone back to kind of where he was known and loved. But then at the same time, you look at kind of past seasons for Aguero, and he's still getting those numbers. Of course, this season hasn't exactly gone brilliant for him, but if he can get himself up to full fitness and full speed, he's a deadly striker at the end of the day. He might have lost a few yards of pace, but I don't think you can take away that penalty box pedigree that he has. That's something that's kind of ingrained with you. And yes, it might involve more running for the people alongside him, but I think he'd be a huge asset to any Premier League club if he can still prove that he can maintain that level for a substantial number of games. And I saw a stat that showed the positions for all of Aguero's goals. And the amount of goals he scored from those tight angles and one-on-one situations is quite ridiculous, to be honest. When you think about it, bearing down on goal from angle, the keeper's got pretty much everything covered. To have that striker's initiative to either go for the far post, go for through the legs, or go for the near post is incredible. And I don't think that's something that deteriorates over age. So it's just about if he can start to understand his body and where it's at now and more things like that, then I wouldn't be at all surprised to see if he remains in the Premier League, because I genuinely think he's still at that calibre of striker he is.
I mean, I saw in the news earlier today, actually, that Arsenal, Chelsea, and I can't believe this, but apparently Manchester United have all already been in contact with him. So he's that hot of a property. Whether or not that's true is yet to be seen. But I mean, why not? They're all big clubs that need a striker, that need a goal scorer. And I can see him. Me and Nathan were saying a minute ago, I can see him going to Chelsea, not Man United. He's been at Man City for 10 years. I think, as much as he is loved by Man City, I think he would be hated by them if he just dipped to go to Manchester United. But yeah, Arsenal, maybe, but I just, in my mind, he doesn't fit there. He just doesn't look like he should play for Arsenal. But Chelsea, I think that's a real option for him. And I saw in the news that he is debating staying in the Premier League because he does think he can still play at the top of level for a little bit longer. But I mean, yeah, like you said in the documentary, he said that he does feel lonely in England sometimes. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. But he's too old, in my opinion. Not too old. He's not old enough yet to move back to Argentina. Got that completely wrong around. And he's still got too much talent. He's such a good goal scorer. He's lethal, like you said, and in the last decade, past 10 years, he's the top Premier League goal scorer. He's got the most assists in the Premier League ever. He's the 4th top Premier League goal scorer in history, and got the most hat-tricks ever. So, I mean, I think he's also the top overseas striker in the Premier League as well in terms of goals. So, I mean, he's a legend in the Premier League. He's always going to be known as, one of the best, in some minds, the best Premier League striker in history. So it'd be a shame if he goes. But I personally think he's going to stay in the Premier League for a year, maybe a year and a half or 2 years more. I think he might do a Cavani sort of stint at maybe Chelsea. You never know.
It's interesting because obviously I think a lot of people assumed he would, if he was to stay at the top level of football, it would be to Barcelona. And that's where he would go. But I mean, upon sort of talking about the news scene today, I've seen that Haaland is looking like kind of, there's talks for Haaland to go to Barcelona. I don't know where they've managed to get the money for that, but apparently that kind of, in a way, if that happens, there's no way Aguero ends up at Barca because they just all won't need it with Haaland and Griezmann and a few of the other players they've got. And aside from, I did a quick little Google search of who played for Argentina. It's Independiente. So that's probably where he would go back to if he was to go back to Argentina. So it kind of does shorten down your options. Chelsea, Independiente, maybe if he still wants to play, I'd say PSG kind of, I can see Aguero playing for PSG. But I don't know if there's enough, that's off my head, nothing else. No news source. The source is me for that one. So I haven't got anything else for that. But where does he rank in terms of the best Premier League? I mean, obviously we've missed a few because of our age, but in terms of best of all time, where do you think he goes?
I think when you think about it in terms of our era, obviously you've got the Rooneys and the Henrys and people like that who were kind of the tail end or their prime for us, and you might not be able to remember it too clearly. But Aguero is someone who, I can still remember his debut. I may get this wrong, which would be quite embarrassing if I've just said I can remember his debut, but pretty sure it was against Swansea, scored twice in a 4-0 win, and one of them was from about 30 yards out. And he was just that sort of player who, when you picked up the ball, you just had a feeling that he was going to do something with it. You know, prime example against QPR in the most nail-biting situation ever. Drives forward like, you know, he takes a chance, basically. It was quite easy in that situation to cycle out to the wings and whatnot, but he doesn't. He doesn't play like that, and it resulted in one of the most memorable goals in the history of the Premier League. So for me, he's right up there. I think it's difficult for us, I think, because of those players kind of slightly before our time who were tearing up the leagues, you know, the early noughties kind of area. You know, obviously we were aware of football at that point, but I don't think we were quite as engrossed in it as we soon were in the next few years. In terms of where I'd actually put him, I think I would go second. I think Wayne Rooney just edges it for me. You know, he was just a different kind of player on his day, you know, from such a young age as well. And for such a, you know, substantial amount of time. You know, I can't remember exactly what the record was, but he scored that ridiculous free kick against Stoke that tied him for something. And I can't remember what it was. I think it might have been, yeah. But that was sort of the tail end of his career at United as well. To still hit that was incredible. And, you know, the days of him playing with, you know, Nani, Ronaldo was just, even as a Spurs fan, you know, you just have to appreciate football sometimes. But Aguero is a close second for me. I don't know about you, Ollie. I imagine that Wayne Rooney, you know, for a bit of bias, is probably your highest as well.
I think I'm going to shock you. He's not. In terms of, I'm going to go from the sort of players I can remember. Like you said, the others we sort of were there in the curtain tail end of their sort of career. So I'm going to go with my top three. I think that I personally seen is going to be, in no order, this is Rooney, Aguero and Van Persie. Three quality strikers. If we're talking about all-round footballers, I am putting Rooney top, because you saw him playing all the different positions, and as a Man United fan, he's amazing. He was my number one Man United player when he was playing for Man United, because he was just incredible, and what he did for the club's amazing. But if we're talking about being clinical and the best finisher, I'm probably going to go Aguero, just because I feel like I know Rooney scored more goals, but Aguero just, when Rooney got the ball, and I know towards the end of his career, he was missing some shots, stuff like this, and Aguero just seems to have not lost it. Even when he's not injured, that is. Even if he's on the pitch, you know, all he needs is that one opportunity to take it. And I just feel like, I know he hasn't scored as many as Rooney in the long run, but I don't know. I think Aguero is just a better finisher on the ball, sort of in his prime. And no disregard to Rooney. Rooney was an amazing striker, and he's still one of my favourite football players ever. But yeah, I'd say Aguero, then I'd say Rooney, then I would say Van Persie if we're on about finishing. But if we're on about overall strikers, yeah, I'd put Rooney top. And Aguero, I don't know, second or third. I really liked Van Persie. So it's a tough one, but yeah, maybe I'm going to say joint second. I'm going to, you know, wimp out of that one. I'm going to put joint second with Van Persie. But if we're on about finishing and you want to go, I'm going to put Aguero top, which, you know, clearly shock you there, Kieran. But, you know.
It did, yeah.
What about you, Nathan?
I'm trying to pay homage to the time before me. You can't not have Thierry Henry first. I think Thierry Henry, most people, is the greatest player to ever play in the Premier League. But he was a striker, therefore, in turn, making him the best striker to ever play in the Premier League. Alan Shearer has to feature on the list because just the amount of goals he scored. Wayne Rooney, again, as we said, has to feature on the list. I always feel like Aguero probably, in terms of, because it's about what he's done in the Premier League. There's strikers that play in the Premier League that I think are a bit better than Aguero, like Suarez, for example. I think Suarez is better than Aguero. But Suarez was only in the Premier League for a short stint, you know, for 3-4 years. Well, not short stint, but sort of like a medium stint. So Aguero probably comes in about 4th or 5th for me. Drogba is in the conversation. I don't know where, but he's in the conversation somewhere, as is Van Persie. I think Harry Kane will be in that discussion soon. We could have this conversation in 5 years' time. I think
him and all the strikers who ever play in the Premier League right now.
I think Harry.
What about Torres?
Torres is another example of a player that I think is better than Aguero at his pomp. But obviously, he wasn't. You know, Torres had that sort of sharp decline in form. If Torres had carried on, we'd be talking. I feel like we're talking Torres kind of just below Rooney in that list. But I think for me, he comes in 4th or 5th for me, and I probably think about it, but. He gets Europa League definitely. So
and in hindsight, then you need 20 players. So that's quite good, to be honest. So, I mean, I thought you were about
to pay homage. I can't be.
Or to Shea Adams in a minute. You know, you're everyone.
I couldn't believe I was no Thierry Henry. I was like, what?
I think it's because me and Ollie more went for like focused on like kind of our generation. Like obviously Rooney
Yeah.
was part of the noughties era, but a lot of the time he did spend kind of still winning the leagues when Sir Alex was there, and I still remember that quite clearly. Whereas Henry, the only goal I can like picture him scoring is that one against Leeds.
Or when he came back.
You remembers it, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he came back.
Yeah, when he came back, scored that lovely. Yeah.
After it, so I think, of course, if I was to consider it the whole perspective, I think I would be somewhat similar to you in terms of Aguero's placement, because you can't not look at Shearer's goals and stats for that. And Thierry Henry was just a different kind of player. You know, and obviously watching clips isn't the same as watching it live.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, when stats are that prominent, they speak for themselves, really. But in terms of kind of our generation, I think he would be higher up. So that's why I kind of put him second.
That's what I mean. I'm pretty sure I said as much as I can remember, because I can't remember seeing Thierry Henry play. I've seen obviously highlights and clips and stuff like that, but I mean, unlike you guys, I think I got into football a little bit later. So I mean, I can't really remember that sort of and I don't want to go off highlights, because I mean, if you put highlights of Thierry Henry and Aguero, all you're going to see are positive things. Obviously, unless you watch compilation of their worst moments, which obviously speaks for itself. But I mean, so I can't really speak to it. So mine was kind of going off what I can remember, and from what I can remember, you know, Aguero has been one of the, if not the best, like I said, striker in the Premier League. From one departure to another, however, this time it's in the shape of the England under-21s, as they were eliminated for the second consecutive time in the group stage of a major tournament. Now, a lot's been said around the team. There was high hopes going into it, because if you look at it on paper, it's a very strong squad. But the manager has called the job mission impossible, saying that if anyone's in it to win games and not develop players, then they're in the wrong job. So, you know, a lot of people have got a lot of things to say on this. Nathan, as well as saying that it's mission impossible, he completely disagrees that he's not even developing the players. So I'm just going to get straight to Nathan, because this guy's got some big views and he's going to tell us now.
There you go. You're going to be funny. When the views has got the general opinion. He's not good enough for the job. It's as simple as that. He wasn't good enough for the job when he got it, and he's still not good enough for the job now. He was a failed club manager who's become a failed international manager, and I'm sure he's a nice guy. But he's not good at his job. You know, he can't. That squad is so talented, and I'm not saying it should win the Euros. I mean, France's under-21 squad is good enough to put a dent in the World Cup. Like it's a very good squad. Portugal have got a good under-21 squad. There's a few other countries that are probably on a level with us, but these players are Premier League and Championship regulars on the most part that are in this squad. You sort of go over the starting 11. You know, I'll talk more about Curtis Jones in a minute, but I mean, he's a Liverpool regular, and you know, just a whole bunch of others. I mean, you go through that squad, you put this player's good, this player's Eze, Brewster, you know, these sort of players. It's the second year in a row, and it's a different squad from last time, and it's the second time they've failed in the same way. Not good enough. The problem last year was defending, and you know, I did an article on it, and when I was doing the research, in the last tournament they lost 2 games or lost points in 2 games from the last 5 minutes, where they conceded 3 against Romania and 2 against France. So that was the problem going into the tournament. This problem is that England have just been so poor going forward, with probably a more exciting attacking lineup. Smith Rowe, Eze, Nketiah, some fantastic players. He's just not good enough for the role. And in terms of not developing players, the under-21 system has been great for England to get players through, and it has something that Southgate is very fond of, because obviously his work there previously. But you have the likes of Tanganga, who was playing right. They went to a back 4. The first game played a back 5, second game back 4. Instead of going with the out-and-out fullback Max Aarons, he chose Tanganga, who's a fantastic player. But he's a fantastic centre-back. He's not a fantastic right-back. Is he ever going to play right-back for England? No, he's not. He's a centre-back with a lot of potential. He's never going to touch right-back for England. There's about 17 different right-backs for England who could play there before him. So, and then Curtis Jones not playing in the midfield. If Curtis Jones gets into that England side, he's going to play in central midfield. Davis, Skip, great players, very similar players. It's the same. You know, people moan about how Rice and Phillips should not play together in the England team, in the England senior team. It's the exact same problem, and so he has to go. He has to go. There's no time for it.
It's funny that you speak about that duo for the main England team, because I know Kieran, when the lineup was announced with those 2 in the centre part, was fuming at it. So Kieran, what do you have to say? Because I mean, he just said that. And I can remember you clearly saying it to me, saying, "Why has he done this? This guy is delusional." So Do you think he should be sacked? Not Southgate here. We're not on about here. We're on about.
Well, I mean, Nathan's right. It must be an England manager thing. I like this player so much that I'm going to play another player who's pretty much the same as him. You know, they just counteract each other. This is why I hate the words double pivot. It gets on my nerves so much because it makes you sound like you're some fanatical football fan who knows everything that you need to know about football. And what it's basically saying is two midfielders that play a bit deep is what it is, really. I still think that the better thing to do is to have one player that does the deeper role, because he, as that player, can shepherd across the midfield, the back line, clear up any mistakes or mess or what have you. If you get two players that do that job, which is exactly what Rice and Phillips do, they literally play in the same position. They just get in each other's way. You know, it's like you look at FIFA formations, 4-2-2, the second one where you can have two DMs. Regardless of what it means, it's a formation on FIFA, so it works. No, it doesn't work. Having two holding midfielders doesn't work. And that's exactly what Eddie Boothroyd did. And I don't understand it, especially when you've got someone like Curtis Jones and you've got all those attacking players. Why not release more of them? You know, such an attacking kind of setup that they've got there. And you're playing two of the same player. Burn off Tom Davis. You know, I know he's got Premier League experience, but Skip is 10 times the player he is. You know, like, I don't understand it. And, you know, that was kind of the downfall of it. As soon as you start chopping and changing in a major tournament, changing the system and whatnot, it's just not going to go well. And to come back to Nathan's point about Tanganga, he's a very good right back, but I do think he's a better centre back. So to have someone and play him out of position, I don't understand quite as much. And the funny thing is about this is, obviously the last game for the under-21s was at the time of recording this yesterday. And they actually played really well, you know, in the large part. Dwight McNeil was very good. Curtis Jones was very good. And Nketiah is terrible. I think he's an awful footballer. I'm sure he's a lovely bloke. And he does score goals, but he's just not really that good. But Curtis Jones, Eze and McNeil just absolutely run the show going forward. And they looked so deadly, you know. Curtis Jones's goal, which, you know, was going to send England through until Croatia scored, was a brilliant instinctive finish. And the scenes after the match with him were obviously, you know, quite upsetting, but also kind of good, because, I mean, the bloke cares and you can clearly see that, you know. And I think that's one of the biggest things about footballers now is if you have that passion, then you want to win games. And it almost feels like Boothroyd doesn't have that passion by saying it's a developmental thing. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, your job is largely to develop people, but you still want to win. Like, you look at Premier League 2 teams, academy teams. Yes, this is not their end goal, obviously, because they will get older. But what's the excuse for not winning, especially when you've got such a talented crop of players? So I really don't understand where that came from. You know, I think that's kind of, he's realised he's in deep water, and that's kind of the last trick in the book of trying to relieve some pressure. But for me, he's got to go. And to coin a phrase that's, you know, kind of sadly come up more recently in memory and respect and love to Claude, is, for Eddie Boothroyd, it is time to go. It really is.
You say about excuse in not winning games and stuff like this. Nathan, I'm going to point this question to you.
Okay.
The England squad, I'm on about the under-21s when I say this, it's got a lot of players in it which have experienced the negative side of football in terms of being relegated. So you've got the Sheffield United goalkeeper, Ramsdale, I think, I'm going to say his name wrong. You've obviously got Bruce, who's probably going to go down with Sheffield. You've got Max Aarons on the right. So and with the England team consistently losing recently, you know, last two consecutive things, then in their own teams, they're getting relegated, they're losing. Obviously, I know you want Curtis Jones, but he's been in a Liverpool side that's been losing. Have they got that winning mentality? Because they're in actual teams which are losing. They're in the under-21 team which are losing. It can't help. Maybe the other players just, you know, they haven't got the right mentality to actually, you know, kickstart the under-21 team.
I think some players will be coming in from poor club environments. That's Sheffield United. You know, it's probably not very good over there, especially with all that's going on. I think Norwich will be all right because I think they're dominating the Championship right now. They're doing very well. And a lot of them players, the Championship ones, they tend to be in clubs that are doing all right, winning, obviously. And then there are some that aren't, but that's the nature of international football. Everyone's coming from different places. There's some environments that aren't going to be so good. There are some environments that are going to be really good to play in. But it just comes down to the players aren't blameless. The players aren't blameless. You know, no one's saying that this is all Boothroyd's fault, but you have to, this is twice in a row, and this is the second crop of players. I mean, this first crop of players featured the likes of Mason Mount and Fikayo Tomori when they was making their breakthroughs at Derby under Lampard, had Dean Henderson after his season at Sheffield United. Same failures, you know, and they didn't get out of the group stage. And I mean, it may be a larger problem with the FA's recruitment. Well, we was just looking before we started on this, with 5 of the last 6 tournaments they failed to get out of the group stage. So maybe it's an even deeper issue than what we realise, and it might come down to the mentality of the players. But I feel like that can be instilled in them with the right manager. We've seen the under-20s have had success. The under-17s have had success. They're even younger. They've not developed that. You know, they've not been around football to develop that proper, you know, we're going to win everything, that winning, you know, proper Mamba mentality, as the late Kobe Bryant would say. So it might be a structural problem, really. And Boothroyd strikes me as, again, I don't know him, so maybe this is a bit harsh, but kind of a yes man. That's why they kept him in the job the first time. It's because he's not going to provide many from. It's the same reason Steve Bruce is still at Newcastle. It's because he's not going to provide much trouble to the owners, in this case, the FA, when really they could recruit someone who is on it. And with under-21s, it's very different. It's difficult to identify who, because you don't know who would want that job as an under-21s manager, because it's a bit different. You're looking at more like coaches and people like that. And let's be honest, we don't have a great knowledge of who coaches who and what's that, aside from managers. So you're looking at different players, but Boothroyd is not the man. Failed at Northampton. I mean, he was coming off a spell at Northampton where they were bottom of League 2, and he got sacked. And then his next job was England under-20s, where he was then promoted to England under-21s manager. And for all credit to him, it started off well with winning the Toulon tournament. I remember that. I think Matt Grimes was at that tournament while he was still at Exeter for that one. But it was, from then on, it's just not worked. And when something's not working, you have to fix it. And he has to go.
But you're saying it's not working. In his words, he said he's there to develop players. And obviously, credit's got to be given to the clubs that they're actually at. They're not at England as much as they are as at actual clubs. But players are going into the first team. You've got Dean Henderson, you've got Mason Mount, you've got Jude Bellingham. He clearly said he was expecting to have Jude, he was expecting to have Mason Mount, and obviously he was expecting to have Greenwood. So things haven't always gone his way in terms of injuries going into this. But Kieran, do you think in terms of what he was actually saying, in terms of expecting to have certain players, and, you know, saying that his job is to develop players, do you not think he's kind of doing that? Obviously, credit can't just be given to him, like I said, the clubs, but he's got a part to play in them being pushed up to the first team.
I mean, for me, his part to play in it is get these players playing in an international tournament at a high level, experiencing the highs and lows and the drama of being in a knockout game, a quarter-final, a semi-final, a final. I mean, I look at these under-21 teams, and England should have breezed through that group, really. You know, Portugal were fantastic. I can understand them finishing top, but Croatia were bang average. They really were. And if you compare the time spent for these players at their club and at their international camp, it's vastly different, you know, 95 to 5%. It's the club's job, really, to develop those players. His job is to develop them. But in my eyes, it's to develop them by bringing them onto that international stage and competing at the highest levels of the game further on in the round. You know, I really don't think it's a good enough excuse to just say, I've only spent 2-3 weeks with them, but I'm still developing them. It's like, I don't think that's true. I think to develop them at a club level, yes, one-to-one training, yes, 10-minute cameo appearances. You know, you've got all those cup games and things like that you can fall on. But on the international stage, for me, it's about the experience of playing at those later rounds as opposed to playing minutes, you know, at the end of a first team game, which you're winning. It's not about staying late after training, arriving early and wanting to learn and play. In that moment, those players have got to take what they've learned from the club and apply it into the international stage. And I think at the end of the day, yes, developmental parts of it is key. But for me, I think the majority should be on winning, because you can have the development side of things at the players' club, but on the international stage, you want to get to those later rounds. You want to experience the tempo, the high drama of those situations. And he hasn't done that twice. So I think that kind of answers itself, really, for me.
I mean, I feel like he's getting a lot of stick here, and I'm not by any means going to say that I think he's the man for the job. I'm going to say, no, I haven't watched a single one of the under-21 games, but I think that's why what I'm about to say is my view that at the end of the day, obviously we want all of the England teams to be successful. But you want your main one to be the one, if any of them, you want them to be winning trophies. And I know they're not winning the under-21s. Obviously, they've crashed out. They're in an appalling campaign. But you look at the youth that's coming up through. They're going into the first team. You've got Mason Mount, you've got Jude, you've got Dean Henderson. You've got all these players that are going up. Clearly, the youth system is working. Now, like I said, you want the other teams to win, yes. But at the end of the day, the one you care about most and the one that's going to come under the spotlight the most is the main team. So, obviously, we don't know if that's Southgate, whether that's the coaches, whether that's just the player themselves have got the ability to make that step, or if it is the under-21s coaching staff making them available to be the sort of player they are in the first team. But I feel like some credit's got to be given to them, because there's no way those players can just make that jump without some support from the under-21 team. So at the end of the day, in my opinion, yeah, okay, we want them to win, but the priority is to get them into the first team. That's what they're there for. So when he said the priority isn't to win games, it's to develop the youth, I completely agree with him in that sense. Yes, I think he can't be that flippant with it. He needs to be able to win in games. But his main priority as under-21 boss is to get the under-21s into the first team. He doesn't want to see the same players sticking around for 2-3 years. He wants to see them go up.
So when you watch Phil Foden at Man City, do you credit his development to his one campaign with the England under 21s?
No, not at all. Not at all.
He doesn't spend, and they don't spend enough time. You can't expect a
group of youth players to jump into a team and just to hit it off. People say all the time that you can't put a team star 11. You can't just get best players in the world, put them in a team and expect them to work. It's the coaches on the international level to get them, to gel them, to get them to work well. And they're trying to do that at the same time as enabling them to fit the same tactical setup as the first team. So some credit has got to be given for the ability for Mason Mount to walk from one team to another, to get Jude one team to another. Credit's got to be given to the under-21 management and where they're doing it. Yes, players like Foden, it goes down to Pep Guardiola, it goes down to the players and the management at their original team. But some credit has got to be given for how easy it is for these players to make that step up.
No.
Okay, right. I see where you're coming from. I do. I think you're wrong, and I will explain why. Based on what I've said about the winning and the development side, these players that are coming through, yes, they're great players, but without that already established experience in the later rounds of tournaments at the under-21 level, can we rely on them, to come off the bench or play and make that kind of big step? Look at last night's game in terms of England 1, Poland 1.
2-1.
It was how long before Southgate made a substitution,
Until
maybe he looks down that line and thinks, you haven't got enough experience in those high pressure kind of situations. And that's what I'm saying. I understand the development side of it and credit has to go there, but you have to give them that experience later on in the stages when times are tough, when things aren't going their way, to dig deep and pull out performances from absolutely nothing and give it their absolute all. And if they're not getting that experience at under 21 level, I look at those kind of players, McNeil, Jones, all those, and I think you haven't made it past the group stages. Why would you then feel like you could be relied on in the later stages? And I don't think that is completely down to the player. I do think that's a large part of it is down to kind of the management and how they've been set up. The players don't decide the formation. I think it's completely ludicrous, at least with Southgate when he played the back five. I mean, we all thought it was pretty crap, but at least he stuck to it. That was the formation. Chopping and changing it like that is a management decision. And if you hold your hands up and get it wrong, fair enough. But Boothroyd, I think, is just coming up with excuses, which is why I really don't back it at all.
I'm not sitting here and I'm saying that I think he should keep the job. I'm not saying that at all. Obviously, track record speaks for himself. Like you said, poor in League Two, poor at England under 21. But I don't think all the critics. I think some praise needs to be given, whether that's to him or whether to the background staff, to make that jump from one team to the other as easy as it has been. A lot of players are making that step up quite early on in their careers. Like I've already named the other three, and there's bound to be more people that I have forgotten. And there will be more, probably, when we speak this time next year. It's just the way that England football's going. We have a lot of good youth players coming up and stepping straight up into the first team. And credit has to be given to certain ones. Obviously, certain players do make the jump. I may be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure, didn't Ollie Watkins just jump straight in? Was he didn't play that much?
Yeah, no, he never played 20 minutes.
That's what I'm saying. So, I mean, obviously, certain players do just make that jump, but certain players do go through the whole way. The majority of them do go through the whole way, and they get that tactical, sort of setup embedded into their brain. You're on about that back five. that's probably not him choosing that. That's him going off the tactics of the first team, because their job is to get them ready for that step up. He changed it, clearly thinking, it doesn't work for these players. I'm not going to risk getting them ready for that. I'm going to put it. And it didn't work. Fair enough, it didn't work. But his job is to get them ready, and players are making that jump up. So some credit has to be given, whether to him or background staff, but they're doing something right. I'm not saying enough to keep him in the job, but I'm saying some credit needs to be given when it's due. And clearly, for players to make that jump up, something's going right in some places.
He's doing the bare minimum. Give him credit for doing the bare minimum of developing players. That's the whole point of the system. The system doesn't, if they don't develop players, then you might as well scrap it all. So fair play. He did okay at the start. Again, 2-1 tournament was successful, and maybe he's got players in got players into playing in the England system. But I mean, and the whole touch on what you said before about we have a squad of players all coming in from different circumstances. So does everyone else. Like, do you know what I mean? So does everyone. Why can't we be successful? They don't all play for one club in France. The France under-21 team don't all play for the same team. Spanish under. Why can't we have some success with our under-21s team? Our under-20s team didn't come from the same team.
Who was our manager?
It's all on.
Who was our manager prior?
Southgate.
Exactly.
But Boothroyd is not good enough for that role. And the thing with Southgate is no one wanted Southgate when he joined. Southgate failed at the under-21.
That's what I'm saying. You're saying we've lost 5 out of the last. We've
then Boothroyd for England job.
Last 6. All right. Southgate was failing just as much as this guy was. And now look, people are probably going to say, I know it's still split over Southgate, but he's still done that, and he's still, so I'm getting some plaudits. So to say that it's clearly ingrained that something is going wrong at that level, for us not doing it, you can't just blame this guy when he's just continued the failure that was already there at the club. So now we're taking out on that guy. I just think it's a bit unfair when
that's normal.
He was in a poor position. Clearly he wasn't the right man to up it, but who is? Southgate, who is now, nice little changes. Sorry. But Southgate was there when it was doing rubbish. He's taken over a team, and granted, he's not really improved them. Although he did. He got what? Did he do the most success in the last couple of years?
It was him and Southgate combined.
Yeah. So there was a bit of success. However, we can't just keep attacking this guy when he took over from a team that was doing just as bad.
But we'd be having the same conversation if Southgate was still in that role and England was still failing. It doesn't change. If a club is bad, you look at the manager. And again, it probably is a structural problem with the FA. But right now, there's a man in charge of the club who is not good enough for the role. Wasn't good enough for the role when he got it. Is still not good enough for the role, and he had a bit of success. He's doing the bare minimum, developing the team.
Like I've said, I'm not defending him as the manager.
No.
I am saying some credit needs to be given to him when he's done well in some places, and obviously he needs to take the criticism like a man when it's done. But I'm saying all that's going to happen is we'll bring a new manager in, going off trends, Southgate him, now someone else will come in if he leaves or gets sacked, right? And we'll be having the same argument, same discussion, saying, look, we failed again, more than likely, because the trend shows and speaks for itself. So something needs to be done about the setup of the way that it's happening and from higher up.
And to be fair,
managers can't just fail, and you just can't blame the manager. You've got to blame something that's going on above them.
With Southgate, obviously we said about Southgate in the under-21s, it didn't go very well. He didn't. But what Southgate did with the senior team, I believe this to be important with the under-21s team as well. He instilled a mentality. I think he learned a lot of lessons from that job. Southgate is still, in terms of management, actually fairly new to it. He's not had a lot of jobs, unlike Boothroyd, who has been a career manager. He's done it for a long time. So Southgate learned a lot from that spell, and then he's instilled a mentality with the England squad, which, regardless of what people say about the World Cup run, got us to the semi-finals of a major tournament. We've qualified for the Nations League semi-finals before that. Obviously, I think we failed last time, but we got to the Nations League semi-finals in his first run in that tournament. So he learned a lesson. What I think England 21s need is kind of a progressive coach. AD Boothroyd is not that man. We need a progressive coach who can instill modern mentalities into these footballers. AD Boothroyd is a manager whose best success was in 2006. We need a manager and a coach. If that implies an overhaul of the whole 21s, and it needs a progressive manager who can help these players develop in a modern way, as well as and also gain some success, because success is a great way to do it.
Southgate, I think Southgate should go personally. I'm just saying.
I disagree, but that's nothing to do with this conversation.
Why just saying an overhaul? Have a complete overhaul.
Overhaul of the under-21s, because not everyone's been unsuccessful.
But personally, you're saying about the success of the England team. if you look at the games that we've been successful in, all right, if you look at the games that we've been successful in, we're successful against all the little teams. We come up against the bigger teams, and that's when we fall. We struggled against Poland. We struggled at the first big hurdle we had in the Euros. So we just fall flat when we come against a team that's actually got a reputation.
I'm looking at this on. Look, I've kind of sat back and let you both delve into this, but from where I'm sitting, it seems like you both kind of want the same things. It's just kind of your portrayal of it, and you think that more credit should go there. And I don't think a massive overhaul is needed. I do think there is one needed at the end of 21s, and how exactly they can take themselves going from just developing to actually being successful and winning. Because look at the track record; it's not good at all. And I think from where I'm sat, and you bring in all these talented group of players together, obviously it's going to be difficult to get them kind of playing together. And I think Nathan's absolutely right in terms of a progressive coach that's needed, someone who knows how to win. I think that's, look at Boothroyd with his last job. I don't think that you're kind of defending AD Boothroyd, Ollie. I think it's just more the comments about the developmental side of it that you're kind of suggesting he should be credited for. But as kind of Nathan's already said, and I'm going to say again, is that's literally the job. If you're an academy manager, that's not the final step. That's not the final hurdle. The final hurdle is getting into that first team and then moving on and going from there. So to say that he should get credit for that, I just think is wrong, because he should get some credit, absolutely. But to have that save his job and to cloud the fact that England under 21s can't win, for me, just doesn't seem right or add up.
I'm just going to pop back onto the whole Southgate thing here. I know we weren't going to talk about it. I'm going to just put it on. I know we're running out of time. But in terms of Southgate, okay, we've already turned around and criticised his tactical choice of having those two holding midfielders against, a team that we should be going out and free-flowing attack. But once again, okay, we look at this, and I said a minute ago that we fall and we get to hard hurdle. Okay, look, I've got the fixture up here. We only just beat Poland 2-1, okay? You go back, we beat, and we beat and draw to either of those teams. Belgium, we lost 2-0. Okay, we lost to Denmark before that. Okay, granted, we beat Belgium before that, but then we fail at Denmark. We only just beat Iceland. We come up against other teams. Where is it? I came up against other teams, but we're just going through loads of stupid teams like Montenegro and stuff like that. Where's it?
Looking at England's qualification results isn't going to get you much, because France are never good in qualification. Didn't they got held by some dead teams? Spain have struggled in qualification.
How can we be praising Southgate for beating teams like Montenegro and stuff like that when we?
No one said that. No, England's give some credit to Boothroyd. He navigated through qualifying very well. No one is saying.
Do you have faith in Southgate if we come up against the big teams that we're going to beat them? Because
I don't think we've got the best. I think people overestimate how good we are. I don't think we're better than Belgium. I don't think we're better than France. I think
England.
So we are losing to teams we should lose to.
England I disagree. England have got a team capable of doing much better against the bigger teams that we do. We don't play that exciting football against the bigger teams, and when we even play against the worst teams, as we've already discussed, we put out the wrong tactics. If we're talking about an overhaul, I've said this from the start. I don't think Southgate's the right man for England. He just doesn't seem to do well. Again, he beats teams. I could take over that England team and beat the teams that he's beating, and I would lose the teams that he's losing. It's not.
But again, because that squad isn't good. The England squad is not as good as people estimate it to be. There are teams that are better than us, and we lose to them. Surprise! That's how football works most of the time. Of course, we could do better, but you can't really do much better.
Did we beat Denmark?
Teams losing out. Yes, of course, but you're going to have bad results.
It's because your stupid captain got sent off, wasn't it?
He's fuming. He just dipped.
His laptop's died, by the way, guys. That's what happened. I couldn't respond to Ollie because my fire alarm.
Do you think, if you actually look at it, do you think that going forward, Southgate is the right man? Looking off the tactics, looking off the results against the higher teams. You're saying this. We've got what many people receive as one of the best strikers in the world in Harry Kane. All right, you've got the likes of Sterling, you've got Jadon Sancho, you've got Jude Bellingham coming through, you've got all these talented players coming into this team, and you're saying that we're not good enough to beat certain teams and that we're failing when we come up against people like Denmark. Come on,
I don't think we've got the best squad. So of course, I'd love us to win things, but And the Denmark loss isn't good enough, but there's going to be isolated examples. Again, we could go through Didier Deschamps' reign as France manager and go through some bad performances, bad results.
They're not isolated.
They are.
When we face a big or a mid team, we seem to stumble.
Mid teams, again, we don't run through teams that.
Do you think Southgate?
I think he deserves a chance. Like, right, who would you get in then? I think he deserves a chance. I think he deserves a chance to prove himself at the Euros. Who should we get in there?
International jobs, all right? I'm not going to answer that because I don't know. All right, yeah, and that's easy for me to say get in, but I don't know who we're going to bring in. However, all I'm saying is, if we want long-term success and you want to ingrain success from the youth. There's no point in ingraining the success in the youth if we're not going to have it in the main team. And under Southgate, we're not going to have it.
I think
now, I'm just saying, you're talking about getting success from the youth up to get the.
What do you grant as success for England, though? What's your idea of success for England?
England, whether or not you like it or not, have got a good enough team to be competing at the highest level. And when I mean the highest level, obviously, yeah, we're probably going to go to the World Cup, but I mean get into the semi-final, get into the final. Because that is a solid.
What happened the last time we was in the World Cup and the Nations League? Well, last time we got knocked out in the group stage, but before that Nations semi-final, World Cup semi-final, you can't argue with semi-finals. And Croatia loss wasn't good enough, to be fair. But we've achieved more than what we expected to. I think the 2018 World Cup exceeded everyone's expectation. You can only play who you play against.
But that's true. You can beat who you put against. But at the end of the day, if we were put against the other teams, if we got a harder draw, we wouldn't have got there. And I'm not saying a harder draw like getting Spain, Belgium, France. I'm on about getting, for instance, when we failed against Denmark. We just keep getting easy ones. We keep getting stuff like Iceland and stuff like that. They beat us, didn't they, at one point? So, I mean...
That was Hodgson.
Yeah. So,
that was 2016.
Come on. I just think there needs to be change.
I think he deserves a chance. Look, I think he's earned another chance, regardless of what people think. So he's earned another chance. A World Cup semi-final cannot be argued with, regardless of who he played. He deserves a chance in the Euros. And look, if he's not successful in the Euros, then I will, I'm not closed-minded enough to be like, right, Southgate's the man. Give him the Man United job when he's done. I'm not saying that, but I think he's done a good enough job with England, and he's restored the faith in a country that struggled to connect with their football team for the longest time.
I've got a lot of faith, to be fair, that we can go out and we can beat Montenegro. I'm so happy that I've got that faith in my...
I mean, you can look at qualifying as much as you want. Again, I'll bring you back to the example of the best country in the world, France. I mean, they're not impressive in qualifying. Took Spain, however long to beat Georgia and Greece. Germany just lost to North Macedonia, which is humiliating result. So we can look at quality. You can never analyse these games because you're always going to be disappointed. You expect to go in and win. And then when you don't win 10-0, 11-0, you're a bit like, oh no, this is not good enough. So you can never win with these qualifiers. It's like when you get like a really low team in the FA Cup. It's a lose-lose because you have to win and you have to win style. It's not always going to happen. We're in a really congested season. Players are tired. And players are playing like they're tired. It's fatigue. It's football. The quality of football has gone down in general because of the congestion. I want to give him a chance in the Euros. I mean, I'm not in charge of making decisions, but he will get a chance to Euros, and hopefully he can impress with this squad. I think this squad's good enough. It depends on our draw. It's good enough for a semi-final. I'd be expecting at least quarter-final. And if we lose to a team that are better than us, i.e. Belgium or France, I mean, you have to look at the performances. It's not something you can just look at on paper. So I think Southgate deserves a chance. When the Euros are finished, we'll look over it again. I'm sure we'll talk about it on here. And we'll go from there. But he deserves a chance.
All right, so basically what we've rounded up here is Sergio Aguero, one of the best in Premier League history. All right, we've got the under-21 manager, should be sacked, and then you've got Southgate should follow in suit, according to me. So,
And that wraps up the 1-2 Football podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We're now available on all major podcast platforms and social media platforms, either at 1-2 Football or at 1-2 Football UK. And then also, if you want to take a look at 12football.com for the latest written pieces from our growing list of contributors around the world. We'll be back next week.